1921, archaeologists digging in Tunisia uncovered something that would challenge 2,000 years of historical narrative. Thousands of tiny burial urns, each one containing the burnt remains of an infant, arranged in neat rows, buried with care, and buried deliberately. For over 2 millennia, the Romans had claimed that the Carthaginians sacrificed their own children to their gods, that they burned infants alive in religious ceremonies. It was a horrifying accusation, and the scholarly world largely dismissed it as propaganda designed to demonize their enemies. Until the archaeologists found the Tophet. Welcome back to Cruel Histories. Today we explore one of history's most haunting archaeological discoveries, a place where thousands of children were killed, not in war, not in famine, but as a deliberate religious practice. This is not a story about monsters. This is a story about ordinary people committing extraordinary cruelty in the name of faith. Carthage was one of the greatest civilizations of the ancient world, a Phoenician city-state founded around 814 BC on the coast of North Africa. For centuries, Carthage rivaled Rome itself. Its ships crossed the Mediterranean. Its generals, most famously Hannibal, nearly brought Rome to its knees. And yet, for all its sophistication, Carthage harbored a secret so dark that when it was finally uncovered, historians had to reckon with a truth they had spent 2 centuries dismissing as myth. The god the Carthaginians worshipped was called Baal-Hamon. Some accounts called him Moloch. What is certain is that this god demanded sacrifice, and what the Carthaginians chose to sacrifice was their own children. The Tophet was a sanctuary, a sacred space dedicated to Baal-Hamon and the goddess Tanit. Located just outside the city of Carthage, it stretched across several acres, and buried within it were the remains of thousands upon thousands of children. When French archaeologists first began excavating the site in the early 20th century, they were stunned. The urns were small, designed for infants and young children, most under age 5. Each urn was carefully crafted, many were decorated, many bore inscriptions, and inside each one were the cremated bones of a child. Conservative estimates suggested at least 20,000 urns. Some scholars believe the number was closer to 100,000. The Tophet represents one of the largest mass burial sites of children in human history. For decades, archaeologists debated what they were seeing. Could these be natural infant deaths? Could this be a disease cemetery? Many academics resisted the disturbing conclusion, but the physical evidence was undeniable. In 2014, researchers from Oxford University conducted a comprehensive study. They examined the bones, they analyzed isotopes, they studied cremation patterns, and their conclusion was definitive. These children had been deliberately killed, deliberately cremated, deliberately buried as offerings. The evidence showed critical details. The children had been burned at very high temperatures, consistent with a kiln or furnace, not a funeral pyre. Most showed signs of dying in early infancy. The urns were arranged in neat rows, organized by age and gender, but perhaps most damning were the inscriptions. Many Carthaginian mothers left messages, prayers, dedications. The inscriptions often included the word ender, meaning vow or promise. These were not accidental deaths. These were offerings. Historical texts describe the process. Parents brought their children to the sanctuary. Priests performed the ceremony. The child was placed in a furnace and burned alive while prayers were spoken. The cremated remains were then placed in a smaller burial urn. In times of great crisis, plague, famine, military defeat, the Carthaginians made mass sacrifices. The historian Diodorus Siculus described one occasion when the Carthaginians, facing military defeat by the Greeks, sacrificed 200 children in a single day. Some accounts describe up to 500 children in a single ceremony. The question that haunts modern readers is obvious. Why? Why would parents deliberately kill their own children? The answer lies in Carthaginian religion. Baal-Hamon was the god of fertility and prosperity. He controlled the harvest, the weather, and military success. The Carthaginians believed that by offering their most precious possession, their children, they could secure divine favor. They could ensure good harvests. They could win wars. This logic sounds insane to modern ears, but it made sense within a worldview where the gods were real, present, and hungry, where every failed harvest was evidence the gods were angry, where the only way to appease an angry god was through sacrifice. Historians debate whether the sacrifice was voluntary. Archaeological evidence suggests wealthier families made more sacrifices than poorer ones. Some scholars propose a darker economic angle. Unwanted infants, a newborn with a disability, a child born during famine, an illegitimate child, faced a grim future. The Tophet offered religious justification for what was, in essence, infanticide. The child could be offered to the gods, the family could be freed of the burden, and everyone could maintain the fiction that this was piety, not desperation. The practice intensified during crises. Archaeological evidence shows the Tophet received far more burials during periods of drought, plague, and military conflict. When Carthage faced its greatest threat, Rome itself, the number of child sacrifices skyrocketed. Some historians believe that as Rome began its final conquest in 149 BC, the Carthaginians made a desperate final wave of sacrifices, trying to appease their gods one last time, trying to save a civilization that was already dying. It did not work. Rome destroyed Carthage completely in 146 BC. The city was burned, its population was enslaved or killed. Carthage ceased to exist as an independent civilization for over a century, and the Tophet was buried, forgotten. For 2,000 years, the evidence lay beneath the earth. The Romans had been right all along, but their propaganda had served its purpose so well that by the time the truth emerged again, no one remembered Carthage fondly enough to care. The Tophet teaches us something troubling about human nature. Ordinary people, people who loved their families, who built cities, who wrote poetry, are capable of committing unthinkable acts when they believe they have religious justification. The Tophet remained buried until the 1920s, when French archaeologists dug it up again. And by then, the original civilization had been dead for so long that there was no one left to defend it, no one left to contextualize it. The Tophet became a curiosity, a footnote, a disturbing reminder that even advanced civilizations are capable of horror. The question of whether the Carthaginians were uniquely evil or uniquely desperate remains open. Other ancient civilizations practiced human sacrifice. The Aztecs sacrificed thousands of captives annually, but the scale of the Tophet and the systematic nature of the child sacrifice set Carthage apart. Some modern scholars argue we should not judge Carthage by contemporary moral standards, that we should understand their practices within their own religious context. Others argue there is no context in which deliberately burning thousands of children can be anything other than monstrous. The Tophet suggests we must do both. We must understand the desperation that drove these parents. We must recognize that ordinary people, facing extraordinary stress, are capable of extraordinary cruelty. But we must also condemn the practice itself. We must keep it in our historical memory as a warning. Because the Tophet is not just about ancient Carthage. It is about human nature, about how religion can be weaponized to justify cruelty, about how desperation can erode moral boundaries, about how even the most advanced civilizations can harbor darkness at their core. In the careful rows of burial urns, in the inscriptions left by mothers offering their children to the gods, we see a mirror held up to humanity. We see what we are capable of, not in our worst moments, but in our ordinary moments, when we believe we are doing the right thing, when we believe the gods demand it. Next episode, we return to medieval Europe and explore the Spanish Inquisition, 350 years of systematic torture and execution in the name of religious purity. We descend into the auto da fe ceremonies, where torture became spectacle, where confession was extracted through agony. The Spanish Inquisition. Join us next time on Cruel Histories. If the horror of the Tophet has moved you, if you find yourself haunted by the image of thousands of tiny urns and the mothers who left them, please hit that like button. And if you want more episodes exploring the darkest chapters of human civilization, subscribe now and ring the notification bell. Tell me in the comments, do you think the Carthaginians were uniquely evil or uniquely desperate? How do we judge ancient practices by modern standards? I read every comment, and your insights shape future episodes. Until next time, remember, history is not just the story of great empires, it is the story of ordinary people making terrible choices. And sometimes, understanding why they made those choices is more disturbing than the choices themselves.
you.